Hello everyone and welcome to my live stream every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Here we are again. I'm glad to see you again, and it's going to be my last live stream for a while because next week the Swiss Individual Championship is starting in the Swiss mountains as every year, same period. And after that I'm going to be in Biel at the chess festival as a part of the organization. So I'm not going to make live streams on Thursday night at 8, but I might publish some videos. I might do some live streams spontaneously during the festival. We'll see. I haven't yet planned and figured out everything. But there are some ideas for the upcoming weeks. So the Swiss Championship is starting on, well, the first round next Thursday actually. I'm gonna be leaving on Wednesday already. So first round on Thursday, and it's gonna end on the Friday. So it's gonna last a very long week. And right after the Swiss Championship, I'm gonna be in Biel from July 21st. Until, well, actually going there on the 20th, but basically the Biel Chess Festival is going to start on the 21st in the weekend and gonna last until August 1st, the Swiss National Day, by the way. And well, you've seen just a small preview on the chess festival this year. We have a great, fantastic Grandmaster tournament with world champion Magnus Carlsen taking part in it. The first time a reigning world champion is going to be in Biel, playing at least in Biel, because we had Kasparov once, but he was not playing. Carlsen is going to play Mamedjarov, Vachier Lagrave, Peter Svidler, Navarra, and the Swiss hope Georgiadis, a young GM, who is going to play in the Swiss Championship beforehand. So I'm going to face him before, and he's going to be one of the favorites in the tournament, the Swiss Championship. And after that, well, I was wondering, because I have been in his place before, playing the Grandmaster tournament in Biel many years. A decade ago or so, and I was always very careful about taking part in the Swiss Championship just before the Biel Grandmaster tournament, because it requires a lot of energy. And the Swiss Championship is of course less complicated, but if you want to win it, and that's certainly what I wanted to do and what he wants to do also this year, it still requires energy. But Georgiadis is not a professional. He studies at the Zurich University, and he's not been playing too much this year. League games and so, but no real tournament. So I think it's not a bad idea to use the Swiss Championship as a sort of warm-up. Of course, he's going to take it seriously, not just as a warm-up, but amongst others, it's going to be a test for him. The only problem is if the Swiss Championship doesn't really work. I mean, Biel is going to be tough because he won't have the time to adjust and correct things. On the other hand, in Biel, he has nothing to lose. Rating average is 2740 in Biel. He is himself 2540, around like this. So it's more than 200 points lower than his opponents. And therefore he has nothing to lose. He can only learn, and I know he's not gonna, I know he's gonna be easy to beat by his opponents. Even Carlsen, Mamedjarov also. He's gonna have some tough, perhaps some bad games, but he's also gonna be able to make some surprises along the way. So obviously, well, it's going to be something very interesting. And the Biel Chess Festival, it's called the festival. It's not just a Grandmaster tournament, unlike many other events on the chess calendar. It's a whole festival with many opens. The Master Open, of course, with many Grandmasters. I think that until now around 40 titled players have registered among about 100 participants so far. So it's going to be more probably. There is an amateur tournament also lasting 9 days. There are many one-day tournaments like the Blitz tournament on July 28th. There is a rapid tournament on July 22nd. There is a Fisher Chess Random rapid tournament on the 21st. They are simultaneous. It's a festival. So, hello Anit, Chess, Nicholas, Monkey, Dragnir, I think you're new here. Hello. Anit Chess will be in Biel too. Nice to hear that. What are the most famous national championship? Well, certainly not Swiss championship, but well, in the past, of course, the Soviet chess championships were something great because it would basically, you know, gather all the best players in the world except one or two foreigner, plus maybe one or two top Soviet who had to perhaps prepare for world championship matches. But basically, all the best were there. So, for many years, the Soviet championship was the clearly strongest national championship, and nowadays the Russian championship is obviously still very strong, but probably not as prestigious as before, because it's pretty rare nowadays that all top players, Kramnik, Karyakin and so on, take part in it. But we have Sviller regularly winning it, taking part and winning it. Actually, he's actually the reigning Russian champion, and he has got 8 titles of Russian champions. That's something which is going to be hard to beat. Well, of course, the US championship with the 3 top guys, Weslaiso, Caruana, Nakamura and others this year, Shangland managed to win it. And, you know, all the top tournaments, I mean, top nations, chess nations, I mean, most of them have a very strong national championship, so it's all very interesting. For us small Swiss players, the Swiss championship is already something pretty good. There are also some opens going on, so we basically gather around 300 participants, all tournaments together in the Swiss championship. So it's not so bad. The Biel Chess Festival does better, around twice more. Last year we even had more than 700 participants, so it's something. So, well, here we go. Yeah, the program for today is, as I announced it on Facebook some days ago, and today again, and also on Twitter, I'm going to take a look at my last game, the game I've played last Sunday in the Swiss League, against one of my future opponents next week in the Swiss Championship. That's I am Oliver Kurman, who is, yeah, a guy I know really well. He's 33 years old. He's going to turn 33, or he's even turned 33 this year. And yeah, a very nice person. He's not a professional. He's a lawyer. He's studied law in Lucerne, and he's graduated, and he works in a law firm in Lucerne. His hometown, and that's also the team he's playing for in the Swiss League, while I play for Zurich. And hello Noah as well. And yeah, so I'm gonna take a look at this game, not just for the sake of it, not also because I want it, but also because I want it in a certain, well, in a style which does not really look like me. I'm for those who have seen some games by me, I'm rather a quiet player. I like to have things well done, pawn structures, you know, things worked out pretty well. But in that game, I played a bit in a coffee house style, by pushing my h-pawn and then sacrificing a pawn for some attack. And as you'll see, it was not completely correct, but it was interesting at least. And my opponent quickly made a mistake which gave me some chances to attack, well, some real chances to attack, and then he made another mistake, and then I got an advantage, and it was already felt already more comfortable. But yeah, anyway, if you have questions and everything, always in the chat. I can see that many people are here already, so let's go for that. Let me just switch that on. Yes, here we are. The game is here. Here we are. The ratings are quite approximate, 2550, 2450. Yeah, he might be rated a bit higher. So here we go. I was white. Actually, this was a very, very important match in the very middle of the season, because the Swiss League, unlike many other leagues in Europe especially, the Swiss League is played from spring to autumn, while many of them are played over the winter period. But the Swiss League is like this, and there is of course a long break in the summer, 2 months, even a bit more than 2 month break. So this was the 5th out of 9 rounds, so in the middle, and so far several teams are leading because few of them have played each other. And for our team, it was the first big clash, the match against Lucerne, who also led the league before that match. And Lucerne has players like Hübner, although he didn't play that match, German Grandmaster Kramer, Swiss GM Studer, Swiss IM Kurman, and several IMs, and they even have a very strong, almost 2400 players on the last boards, 7 and 8. So a tough match. Zurich, we have Christian Bauer as a top player. I'm number 2. There is also Kostyniuk, but she didn't play that match. And we have some IMs, some solid IMs. But we are basically a quite equal match on the lineup. And I played this match on board 3, so a bit lower. I should have perhaps played on board 2 according to rating, but we decided to put Christian Bauer on 1 with white and me on 3 with white, because it turned out could be very important to try and score with white. And here we go. I've faced Oliver many times before, most of them with white. And it should also be said that I've trained a bit with Oliver some years ago. I think at the beginning of the years 2010, 2012, 13. We've gathered for a few days sometimes at my home in France when I used to live in Montpellier. I think we made 2-3 sessions, quite interesting. He's a good worker. He's a very sensible player too. One of the top guys in Switzerland as well, and that's for me very important. He's a very nice guy as well. So it's not just about chess. We also spend a good time. We can talk about things, and that plays a part. So we know each other well. We appreciate each other, but still, when we have to play, then it's a fight, as it should be. So I went for knight f3, which is together with d4, my main first move. He played knight f6, c4, and b6. This is a move order he's adopted in the past few years in order to try and get a Queen's Indian against knight f3 and c4. Well, white is not forced to enter this, but it's principled, and I went for knight c3. It should be said that I didn't play d4 on move 1 because he has some more options. His main weapon is the Queen's Indian or the Nim's Indian, but he can also play the Benoni, and even though I don't really mind playing against the Benoni, I preferred cutting down his choices, and that's why I went for this move order. He went bishop b7, d4, and e6. Well, here we are back into a Queen's Indian, and actually 2 years ago at the Swiss Championship against him, I played immediately d4 here, and oh no, it's not true. I first played, but we entered a Queen's Indian with g3, bishop b7, and now d4. And that was another kind of Queen's Indian, which I eventually won. But yeah, usually I like to change a bit and not repeating exactly the same things. So e6, and I went for my old main move a3 or main system, the Petrosian, so-called Petrosian system against the Queen's Indian. It's called the Petrosian system because he's played it quite a few times in his career in the end of the 50s, 60s, of course, and 70s, but he's by far not the one who first played this a3 move. But of course, he's the world champion, and in those times, opening systems would be named by Soviet you know, authorities, chess authorities, who were the strongest in the world. And so they would name openings according to their cities, their players, and so on. So that's why it's not Nimzowitsch, who actually was one of the very first to play a3, but it was named the Petrosian system. And here we are, d5, and Petrosian used to take on d5, as I did here. Knight takes d5, and here many possible moves for white. I went for one of the two main systems. e3, there is queen c2, that's the other main system. There are other moves like bishop d2, which is by far not stupid. And well, those are basically the first three moves. For white, white can diverge here and play other things. Queen a4, bishop g5, even, well, e3 is pretty passive. You can play bishop f4 as well. So, but bishop g5 and c takes d5, clearly the main move. So he went knight takes d5, I went e3. And here we went for g6, which is actually a pretty clever way to treat this variation or this position, because, well, when white plays e3, he actually says that he wants to complete his development and then only play e4. So, for instance, after bishop e7, we can imagine a move like bishop d3, let's say castle, e4, takes, and then we have this typical pawn structure where white has this nice pawn center, but black obviously tries to attack d4 a bit with the pawn on c5, a bit as in the Grunfeld. And it's basically the whole game, the whole fight goes around this strong pawn center against pretty active play for black's pieces, and obviously also a very sound position, a sound pawn structure. So that's normally how the game develops here. And when you keep this in mind, actually g6 makes a lot of sense, because, well, if white goes for e4 later on, let's say, well, giving a check on b5 first is not, yeah, it's quite usual. I could have done it also against bishop e7, but here you can play bishop b5 check, c6, bishop d3 first. It doesn't really change anything because black is going to play c5 anyway, but basically you close the bishop for a while, so it's cannot really hurt. And e4 takes, and then c5. And here you can see the difference. Earlier the bishop was on e7, while now it exerts pressure on the long diagonal. And actually, I wouldn't say it's an improved Grunfeld, but it's actually a very decent version of Grunfeld, and the bishop on g7 definitely plays a nice part for black, because not just because of the activity on this diagonal, but also if we compare with this position, the black king could be slightly in danger sometimes, or at least it could, you know, tempt white into creating some attack. And one of the main lines here runs, let's say, castle, queen c7, queen e2, knight d7, and here pretty early white can play e5, and then try to play h4 and try to attack with knight g5, stuff like this. So basically having played g6 is makes the castle for black much more secure, much more solid. But, well, here I didn't go for bishop b5. I thought for a while, because I actually was taken a bit by surprise by this g6. I mean, in Switzerland you can also switch boards a bit, so it's not very easy to prepare for an opponent. You can switch to two boards from your starting number. So I am number 2 in my team. I can go down until board 4 if I want. I can also play on board 1. And Oliver Kohlmann is number 3, 4. I mean, on that day he was number 3, but he could easily have played on board 2 or on board 5. So it was not easy to be prepared. But I had actually thought that if I play against Oliver, I'm going to play this a3 and see what he does. And okay, g6 I couldn't really expect, because there was no game by him in the database with this line. So I decided, after a small break to think, to go for h4, which is by far nothing. Well, it's nothing new. I was aware that this had been played before. My only real reference was a game between Polugaevsky and Korchnoi, when actually I thought it was Korchnoi against Polugaevsky. But yeah, actually Korchnoi was actually the one who started to play g6 against e3. So he was the one who invented g6. Korchnoi was a Grunfeld player as well. So basically, you can immediately make the link between the idea to play g6 and his love for the Grunfeld. But h4 here is an interesting way to treat the position. Well, if you are not familiar with this position or with this possibility h4, you may easily be scared by white keeping on pushing his h-pawn. But Oliver Koorman reacted in the best way. He didn't really pay attention. He played bishop g7. Well, first of all, it should be said that h5 would be a poor reaction here, because if we compare now the position with h4 and h5, or the lines without h4, h5 included, then we can easily see that it's to my advantage. Or let's say I'm going to give a check here on b5 just to make it the same. Bishop g7, e4, oops, takes, and if he plays c5 now, at least I can try and make use of this square on g5 to launch an attack against the black king. Well, it's hard to imagine that the black king is not going to castle short, so clearly it's in white's favor, especially since black himself cannot use the square, on g4 here. So this basically shouldn't be considered by black as an option, whereas h6 is a decent option for him. Still, I think that it's still better not to touch anything. I would just play the same here and hope that I can somehow try and make use of the slight weakness, the pawn on h6. Later on, a sample line might be bishop g7, e4, takes, c5, bishop e3, and yeah, and then queen d2, and there is going to be a question on the pawn on h6 at some point. Anyway, he went bishop g7. I played h5. If I don't play h5, why did I play h4? And here he decided to castle. He thought for a while, whereas he played bishop g7 very quickly, but here to castle he took a bit of time. And well, the thing is, that game of Polugaevsky against Korchnoi played actually in '84 at the famous match Soviet Union against the rest of the world. Well, Korchnoi played c5, Polugaevsky gave a check on b5, and it was a little bit, just a little bit unpleasant for black. So actually nowadays the main move, the one considered perhaps most accurate, is knight d7, waiting a little bit with castling just in case, and preparing e5, c5, so preparing a break in the center. And that's actually very logical, because there is this this famous sentence in chess that if your opponent attacks on the wing, you should always try and react in the center. And in that sense, knight d7 is very sensual, very logical. You want to counter with e5 or c5. Anyway, that's going to be for another game maybe. So he went castle, and in this position I started thinking for at least 20 or even 25 minutes, because there are some interesting possibilities available for white. And well, the most logical would be to play bishop d3, but then I didn't really like c5, and I can't really go e4 here because it takes on d4, and that's unpleasant. I was thinking of knight e4, which looked decent, and actually after the game he told me he was a bit yeah, he was not really sure about this for black, but I didn't really like knight f6. I mean, I can take on f6 certainly, but he takes back perhaps with the bishop. I can take on c5, he takes back. And it's not really a weakness, this pawn on c5, because black has very strong counterplay on the b file. He's going to be able to organize something. But still, I can play maybe queen c2 and start threatening things on g6. So yeah, it's a decent option for white here. And afterwards, I checked which games had been played. So until this position, not many have been played, but there was one by Anthony Miles, where he took and played knight e4. And actually, I consider knight e4, but without exchanging on g6, and then it's a little bit less good. Well, the point is white sacrifices a pawn here after knight e4, and I'm not really sure if his opponent took the pawn, but in any case, if he does by taking on e3, takes, and well, you can see if we have left pawns here on h5 and h7, then the bishop can perhaps take back on g6 and protect the king. So that's a difference maybe, but maybe not a big one. So knight g5, anyway, bishop d5 and queen g4, and you know, this looks like a decent compensation as well. Well, it's not yet mate. I mean, the black king, I mean, there is always rook e8, and even if I play this, it's not mate. I have a check, a very nice check on h7, but that's about it for the moment. So white needs some fuel to strengthen his attack. Still, I mean, black has to be careful in this situation. So that would have been a decent option as well. But after thinking for yeah, as I said, almost 25 minutes, I decided to play e4 immediately, sacrificing a pawn. And I was aware that this should actually be a bit dubious or very speculative at least, but somehow it looked interesting, and perhaps a bit too interesting for not trying it out. He took on c3, I took back, and he took up the gauntlet. Of course, he took on e4. So I'm just checking your comments, because suddenly I was starting talking and not reading. Yeah. So hello Elias, h4. Actually, Elias, you've played h4 before. Yeah, you might find the game. Okay, I'll check that game in the database. Yeah, see if it's there. Elias is a young Swiss talent, and yeah, it's always nice to see that young talents follow, I mean from Switzerland especially, follow this live stream. I'm very flattered. So b takes c3, and yeah, he can also leave the pawn and not touch it and say, okay, I'm just gonna follow up with my plan and play c5, but then I'm not really unhappy that I played e4, and the computer says, okay, takes on g6, maybe bishop g5, queen c7, and an idea is perhaps to play queen d3 here. Bishop d3 is decent, but then okay, there were going to be problems. So maybe queen d3, and you never know what I might want to do here. Switch my queen to h3 could be an idea at some point. So anyway, he took on e4. It's not just the best move, it's also a very principled reaction. Knight g5 was my idea. And in my, you know, long thinking, before I decided to sacrifice the pawn, I considered bishop d5. I saw that bishop can go back to b7, c6, but the square d5 appeared to me as the most logical, because from here the bishop protects a bit these pawns, these squares, and I think it can be quite important for defensive reasons. So I focused on bishop d5 mainly, and not really on the move he played, which we are going to look at soon. After bishop d5 I wanted to go queen g4, and actually I've sacrificed a pawn, but look at my development. It's pretty bad, in fact. I have developed just my knight, which has moved twice already. I have pushed my h-pawn, so we can basically say that my rook on h1 is developed, but I haven't castled. My king is in the center. There is an open e-file on it. I mean, not totally open, but it can be opened by black pretty soon. My bishops haven't moved yet. So, and I have given up a pawn, and black is better developed. He has his 2 bishops are out. He just needs a knight move to be fully developed, basically. And okay, he has castled into fire, let's say, or so that's basically my only chance. His castle is maybe not really weak, but I want to attack it. There are ideas like knight takes h7, by the way, it didn't really work here because he just goes back to g8. And after queen h5, he can take here on g6. And, well, there's nothing I really have here. So queen g4 is definitely the best move. And, well, black has to defend. It's not an easy task. Not everyone is comfortable with this situation. And I was also hoping that I would be able to shake him a little bit. Because Oliver is someone who is a player who likes to have position he has worked out well, he's familiar with. So I was pretty sure that this position wouldn't really suit him in a way, because he's not really used to being under an attack so early on in the game. So that were a bit my thoughts when I decided also to sacrifice a pawn. So the psychological aspect of my pawn sacrifice was definitely an important factor. So here there are basically 2-3 good moves for black, and I was considering knight d7 when I thought I could take and play queen h3, and then I saw rook e8, and it's complicated. I mean, I can give a check, I can, but that's just a check again. And I can play bishop d3, but he really wants to play e5 soon and open the e-file against my king. It's not really clear who is going to attack whom there. What I could perhaps try and play is c4 here, let's say bishop b7 and maybe bishop e3. Or bishop d3, it's hard to tell. Well, because now at least if he plays e5, I can close the center with d5. That could be an idea. But here, okay, he has e4 maybe. He doesn't really win the rook, but still it's clear that black is starting to be active as well. Or I can play maybe bishop e3. Maybe just to be solid for 1 or 2 moves and keep some ideas against his king. I mean, it's not such a clear thing here, but I don't really trust it for white, really. I'm usually quite a skeptic person when it goes about, you know, such easy attacks on the opponent's king, whether I attack, whether my opponent attacks. And therefore I was a bit skeptical, but I thought there were some practical chances. Yes, of course, I know that Noah Fecker is also a big talent from Switzerland. I know that because I work with him. So of course. And yeah, so here this would have been pretty critical, but instead of knight d7 there is also rook e8 immediately. And let's say I take, and it can be very similar to what we've seen. If I play queen h4 or something, then he's gonna go e5, and here it's basically crushing. I think the computer here shows knight takes f7, king takes, not king f8, but king takes f7, and bishop d3. And the computer is not so, you know, it doesn't give such an advantage for black. I mean, it's pretty close to equal, which is not a bad sign for white when he's a piece down. So it could be interesting, actually. Anyway, let's now turn to the game. But this bishop d5 would have been the critical continuation. He went queen d5, which surprised me a little bit at first. But in a way it makes sense. But clearly Oliver overlooked my response in this position. It's a surprising move and not an easy one to spot. But when you apply logic in your thinking process when you're trying to find ideas to try and find the best move, then you kind of consider it after a while. I mean, there is this in chess, you know, this old method from the Soviet chess by Kotov and so on, which says that you first, before you start calculating variations, you have to determine all candidate moves in the position and only then start calculating. Well, that's very nice in theory, but in practice it's very hard to do, especially because time is scarce during a chess game. So you can't really just spend 20 minutes finding all the candidate moves. And usually candidate moves appear during your calculations. For instance, what I want to say, well, the first thing I calculated, of course, was f3, which is nothing special because of bishop f5, and I cannot play g4 because he takes. So what I was trying to do is find something here, because his bishop is almost trapped on f5, but he only needs a tempo. If he can play e5, he breaks open the center in his favor, and he frees his bishop. So I was considering here rook h4 to try and play g4 and capture his bishop. But of course he can play e5, and then he's doing well. And that's how the move rook h4 appeared, immediately rook h4 appeared as a valid candidate moves. But I don't think I would have really thought about rook h4 in the first place. Well, actually, there is another idea which is very decent for white. It's just to exchange on e4 and play bishop e3. And after knight d7, bishop e2. Well, I'm threatening bishop f3, so let's say rook a d8, and I can now play bishop f3. I'm probably going to castle short. I should forget about my hopes to mate him. And thanks to the two bishops, I should have some compensation for the pawn. But this compensation is basically enough just to fight for equality, not more. So after a while I calculated things, and I decided to go rook h4 with, well, a direct threat. I'm threatening to take on e4, and obviously now he cannot go to f5 because I'm gonna play this and capture his bishop. So, well, bishop takes g2 is forced. Well, it should be said that if he plays bishop f6, I can take with the rook, bishop takes g5 and play rook e5, winning a piece. So he took on g2. And my idea was to play c4, which is also now possible because my rook on h4 protects d4. Hello, chess improvement. Nice to see you again. I think we hadn't seen you in the last live stream, or perhaps even the last two, but maybe I'm wrong. So c4, now another nice point to have played rook h4. And well, when I was calculating rook h4 before my 13th move, I considered mostly queen b7, but I also understood that queen c6 may be actually good because, well, after a while, it took me a little bit of time to understand that d5 here doesn't work. Well, it looks logical to cut the coordination between the queen and the bishop, to try and win the bishop on g2. But here he has bishop takes d5. And, well, if I take queen c3, he wins the rook, and it's gonna be bad. So, yeah, queen c6, and then I was thinking that I could try and play like in the game, but definitely it's an improved version for black, if we compare this to what he got in the game. Oliver told me after the game that he didn't play queen c6 because of bishop d3, and he doesn't like the fact that his bishop cannot retreat to c6, and here he was afraid that I would be able to play f3 and things like queen e2 and capture his bishop. It's a bit slow, unfortunately, and here I can just play knight d7 or even perhaps rook e8 again and try e5 afterwards, or something like this. And I'm not in time to catch his bishop, and black is going to be better here. So after queen c6, I think that my intention would be the best continuation here. It's knight takes h7. Well, because now, okay, we're gonna see it in the game as well, because I played the same sacrifice on h7. But yeah, he can't really take. I can show it quickly. Takes here, goes back, queen h5, and I'm threatening mate. If he takes, I check, goes here, and I can play, well, either bishop h6 or first check on f4. And let's say if he goes here, I can take here, and then g2 is hanging. So it's winning for me. So he should take on f1. And here, well, you know, we could consider intermediate moves like takes on g6 or takes on f8, but it's not really sufficient. So the best way is to take on f1. That's what I was calculating during the game, and I couldn't really figure out if it was good for me. The point is here, black can still not take on h7. He would lose, but he can sack the exchange by finishing the development a bit like in the game, knight d7, or perhaps even more active knight c6. The computer, well, he basically takes on g6 and on f8, or first on f8 and then on g6, and it claims that the position is unclear, but black has 2 pawns for the exchange, and well, his king is not entirely safe, but so is mine, and well, I think chances are more or less reciprocal here in this position. Besides this, he can also try and keep the rook and play rook d8. He might threaten to take on d4. He might play e5. So there are some ideas. Of course, white also has some chances here. He can take on g6. He can play bishop e3 perhaps, or first take on g6, then bishop e3. Some, you know, like bishop e3 looks like a pretty solid move as well, to protect d4, try and play rook c1, gaining in tempo on the queen to perhaps take on c7, which is an attacking move, rook takes c7. So unclear consequences, but certainly a better move than what he played in the game, because after queen b7, I think he simply missed my possibility to sacrifice on h7. I'm sure he took it into consideration earlier in the game, perhaps even at most moves, but here he missed it. It happens always or often. So I took on h7. Actually, I had seen it before, and he took his time before moving his queen, so I had time to check it again. So I took on h7 almost instantly, and that was pretty unpleasant for him. Well, you know, concrete lines work well for me. If he takes on h7 again, it's the same as before. Of course, he can't take on g6. It's going to be mate like this. So he has to take. He has to go back to g8. I play queen h5 again. He has only one way to prevent mate. That's take. Well, if he goes away with the rook, I check and play bishop h6, and mate will follow. So he has to take on g6, and I check on h7, and here again I can choose bishop h6 or just rook f4, king e8 takes on g6, and wins everything more or less. Yeah, actually it's important that he cannot play bishop f3, because I simply have bishop e2. And it changes nothing, except the fact that in the end of the variation his bishop is not hanging on g2, but if he takes on h7 now, it's not going to save him. More or less the same variation here. I think bishop h6 is perhaps the most accurate, and rook g8 I just go to f4, and then I'm gonna win the game. Actually, there was a pretty nice variation which I wanted to show you, even though it's not really relevant, because black has other moves. After h takes g6, he should take with the f pawn, I think, because if he takes with with the h-pawn, there was a very nice line here, which is queen g4, and we found it after game. Queen g4, I want to take the bishop amongst others, and if he takes on f1, here I have a beautiful move, which is quite typical, but I don't think I've ever seen it in this particular situation when I can play rook h8 check here. Of course, if he takes with the king, it's mate, queen h4, queen h7, so he has to take with the bishop, and queen h4 as well. He cannot move the rook. I'm threatening mate in 1, of course. He cannot move the rook because then I'm taking f7 with mate. He has no check, so he has to play king g7. And here there is a very good move, which is d5, and it's gonna win, because if it takes, I have bishop b2 check, cutting the way, or closing the way, that is the square f6 for his king. And well, after d5, if he goes queen e8, here I would win. There was a win here. I think I'd just take, because his idea is to play e5. It's not over yet. And I think I just win with pawn takes e6. And again, he cannot really prevent anything like bishop b2, and I think I'm winning here. So pretty nice, pretty nice. Just to be, for the sake of completeness, I think that bishop f4 wins as well, and he can't really escape here. I'm threatening bishop f4, and if he plays, well, let's say if he plays this, there is mate, knight h7 with mate to follow, and if he goes knight d7, I can play bishop e5 as well and take, and he can't prevent mate, quite surprisingly. So quite a nice finish here it would be, I think. Anyway, he didn't play knight queen c6, and he should play f takes g6 anyway. We have the game, and I took on h7. So I think we've looked at the options here. He played the best defense, bishop takes f1, which is the only move to keep to remain in the game. So a neat chess is asking me if I can do a live streamer how to play against the French defense. So you mean how white should play against the French defense? Well, I play the French defense with black. I'm not a defender of the white pieces. But then you're asking the line with knight d2. So you would like me to show something for white with knight d2, or something for black against knight d2 in the Tarrasch? I think it would be good if you could be more precise with your question, because I'm not really sure if you want me to be on the white side or on the black side. So in the meantime, I'm gonna continue with the game. Bishop takes f1, and here I played simply king takes f1. There is no better move here. He went knight d7. Again, here it doesn't really change anything. I could show it another time. It's over. So he went knight d7. And well, here again, well, you know, the character of the position has changed. I am now the one with material in my pocket. Well, I can take the exchange, and I'm going to be the one with more material. But my attack has diminished, perhaps even more or less vanished. His king remains weak, of course, but I don't have so many pieces to attack his king. And I'll have to take the rook. The only question is if I should take it immediately, or first perhaps take on g6. And here I understood that if I take immediately on f8, he's going to take back with the knight, with the idea to take back here on g6 with the knight as well. And I have to go away. And by going away, I'm weakening a bit the pawn on d4, which he can try and attack immediately. You know, things like queen e4, and suddenly he's very active. He has a pawn for the exchange. His king is pretty safe. So I didn't like this. course, I'm by no means forced to take on g6, but how do I, or where do I play if I don't take on g6? And that's why I took immediately on g6. Well, he cannot really escape with the rook, because then he would risk getting mated, really. So he took back, I took here. And, well, here he took immediately on f8 with the rook. And I thought maybe knight takes is interesting, because now he's protecting his weak pawns. He also protects entering squares here on the h file. So basically his king is not entirely safe, but it's not easy to attack it. And he's gonna play rook d8. And I have to organize my queen. So basically bishop e3, probably rook move, not here, but to d8, of course. And then queen to g4 or somewhere like this. And okay, rook d1. White is better, but it's not so much, actually. There is a lot of work ahead, I think. Anyway, he took with the rook on f8, and I felt this was slightly more dangerous for him, because he's less solid, at least for the moment. What he wants to do is move the rook up to the f file, could be f5 or f7, and then put his knight on f8. If he manages this, then he's gonna be probably okay, or he's gonna have some compensation at least. That's why I thought for a long time here, much too long, also something like 25 minutes, and I actually caught him on the clock, because he was down to 15 minutes, and I actually caught him more or less on the clock here, which is not good when you are so ahead on time. And here I calculated the following line quite deeply, not enough, unfortunately. Queen g4, it seems normal to attack both pawns. He goes queen c6, and then I should try and take on g6. Queen takes c4, king g1. At first it looks pretty good for me, because I have checks on h7. I could play perhaps even bishop h6, but then I spotted this move, queen c3. And the check on h7 is not going to give much. He goes out, check here, just knight f6. And I don't really have anything. So taking on e6 seems to be normal. He goes rook f7, but here again, I did not really appreciate my position or my chances. I thought if I play rook b1, he has queen c2, but actually here I should have, I saw I had rook f4, but I didn't really understand I had good chances here. And after rook b1, basically the computer says that white is between clearly better and winning. I have recovered one of the pawns, one pawn, the pawn I was down, so I'm a clear exchange up. My king is not entirely weak, and of course if he plays queen c2, I have queen f5, protecting everything, and it's over, more or less. So queen g4, even though I thought for a long time, I did not manage to calculate this line precisely, and in the end I decided to go for an interesting option. Queen e2, well, this looks normal, queen c6, and now bishop b2, because one would like to go to h6 or such places with the bishop, but I thought that this was the best possibility, and actually the computer agrees that bishop b2 is a good move, because he has to be careful of d5 now, and he was not. I think he missed this idea, and he should have played rook f7 to prevent d5, but then I can play rook d1, and he's still far from equalizing here, and well, it's clearly not equalizing, and white is better. I think I'm pretty well organized. My king is a bit weak, but well protected, and my coordination is very good at the moment. And if I manage d5, I'm gonna open another file, or perhaps even more files for my rooks, which is always good when you're an exchange up. You have to play for open files. Well, anyway, he went rook f5, and I think Well, here it's clearly better now for white. I played d5. This was my idea when I went queen e2. He took, I took on g7. He took, I gave a check. He has to play rook f7, and he rook h7. I mean, I had seen so far before I played queen e2, and not really hoping that he would go for it, but it still seemed like a very logical line for black as well. He took, I took, king h6, and when I, well, calculated from afar, I thought there should be something winning here for me. And when we reached the position, or in the process, I actually understood that it was not going to be so easy and that white is not winning yet. From afar, I had seen that I had queen takes d5, which is the safe option to secure an advantage. And actually, here I took another 10 minutes and did not come up with the best continuation. And the easiest move would have been the best here, queen takes d5. I was actually more concerned about the exchange on d5, because if he keeps queens, queen f6, then I'm going to play rook e1, and well, good luck for black. I mean, rook e3 is going to follow, and perhaps rook h3, such ideas. But okay, it's not completely over. He has a nice square for his knight on c5. Yeah, it's not winning yet, but white is clearly better. I think, well, queen takes d5 was the move I was mostly concerned about. Not really concerned, but the question is whether white is going to have enough pawns to win the game. So knight f6, rook d1, and now I've tried to achieve d6 and eventually try and win one or at least more pawns on the queen side. The reason why I didn't really go for it is that I was not really sure about this endgame here. Let's admit that all pawns of the queen side disappear. All the three for black and my two pawns, d5 and a3, all disappear. I managed to take them. He managed to exchange everything. And we remain with f2 and g6. I was not completely, you know, sure that this is winning. I mean, there is a nice article or a nice chapter on these kinds of endgames in the Dvoretsky chess endgame book, where he considers some ways for black to organize kind of fortresses. But I think he has better chances if he has the f pawn and I have the g pawn, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, I was not really sure of this, and then that's why I actually tried to focus on the main alternative, of course, king g2, because I have clear threats now, rook h1, and well, mate is very near. So I focused on this, but I made a mistake, and well, he took on c4, I played f3, and now he went for the obvious move, which I had calculated, and I think it's the first move which springs to mind. You want to prevent rook h1, you play knight f6, and this is a mistake, actually. And I understood that when he actually took his time here, 5-7 minutes, he thought for a while, and I understood that while he was thinking that queen d6 was a very tricky continuation here, because, you know, actually this rook h1 is no mate. And if I do it, then he goes to g5, and I lack some kind of resources. While he was thinking, I saw king h3, and it's actually a good move here, but he can play queen d3. This is something I missed, of course. The computer sees it immediately. Rook g1 check, king h6, and it's still, I mean, looks good for white in a way, but this pawn on c4 should not be underestimated. And he suddenly has very nice coordination. His queen is protected. The queen protects all vital points. The knight is protected. The knight can come to e5 perhaps, or c5. Well, e5 looks like a good square. So I felt like it was not going to be easy. But while I was thinking about this, he went knight f6, luckily for me, because otherwise after queen d6 really things wouldn't have been clear. So unfortunately, I mean, a pretty good game from the start with a very speculative idea, but then marred a bit by a mistake towards the end. But well, he was short of time, and when you're under an attack, it's never easy to defend. So knight f6, and here he missed my move rook e1, which I had anticipated. When I went king g2, rook e1 actually wins the game. He has, well, basically the key variation is queen d6, when after rook e6, queen d2 check, king h3, he has no perpetual checks, and this had to be checked as well beforehand, before I went for king g2. He can't move the knight because of mate here, so his only chance is to try and play queen d1, and I take here, but he has no draw here. And my queen is doing a great job hitting, I mean controlling some very important squares, and if he tries and check here, I escape. And well, I might play queen d4, but king c6 also simply. And it's over, no check, and yeah, he can actually resign here. So that was actually the crucial line. Also important, after knight h5, I have not, of course, rook e6. That would be a small blunder. Queen takes e6 and knight f4. But I have queen f8 winning actually in all variation. If he goes here, I have a rook e7. If he plays this, I have rook h1 and I win the knight. And finally, if he goes up to g5, I check. He goes out there, and I check him on d8. And I'm gonna play. Well, if he goes here, here I have rook takes h5, which is important. And if he goes with the knight to h6 to f6, I have queen d4 to mate him very soon. Important point as well. So, well, he understood he was lost. He tried knight d5. Well, here there are some winning lines, but I went rook e5. I think I could have forced mate, but I played rook e5, which is good enough. I had to calculate just c3, rook takes d5 and c2 when I cannot stop the c pawn, but here I actually make him queen f8. It's not the only way. King h7, rook e5, and here he went to another board to pick a queen and let himself get mated, which is of course a nice way to end the game when you're under mating attack, to let your opponent mate yourself. So, well, not my usual victory, not in the style, of course, because I'm not really a fan of sacrificing pawns in the opening and go for speculative attacks. And definitely, if he had played in this position after knight g5, if he had played bishop d5, things would have been very, very unclear, and perhaps with a cool defense, black would have been able to take over and get the advantage and win the game. So, of course, I don't play against a computer, but okay, I could have been punished, and that's not really my style for this. But on the other hand, when you put pressure against your opponent, I wouldn't really call this a bluff, but it was more calculated kind of risk taking decision. If we can calculate all the risk, it's not really easy, but kind of understand if your pawn sacrifice is going to be dangerous enough or not. And bearing in mind that at chess it's always more difficult to defend than to attack, I think, okay, my idea was not completely unsound. Still, a bit of coffee house chess doesn't hurt from time to time. Well, thank you guys. I need chess, okay, with white. Okay, I'll bear this in, yeah, I'll keep this in mind. It's gonna be for after the summer, because the summer, as I explained at the start, I mean next week I am in the Swiss Championship, taking part at the Swiss Championship for the next 2 Thursdays at least, and then the Biel Chess Festival starting. And we'll see in August how everything unfolds, if I have some time or not. And yeah, well, I'm gonna see you for next live stream in any case on Thursday at night at 8 p.m. After the summer, or at least in August. But keep informed. There might be some things going on in Biel. I might publish some things. Things are going to happen on my channel in July as well. So please, if you have questions or more comments, don't hesitate. Otherwise, I'm gonna see you next time or another time. For those who are new, I could see a few new names there. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Also to like the videos if possible, if you watch them, and if you like them, don't hesitate and don't forget to push the button like, because it's really important, your support to me in the live stream, of course, but also for the videos. There are not too many videos for the moment, but I hope I'm gonna correct and improve on that soon. Thank you then for your attention. If no more questions or comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.